Tonight on The Buzz, we are looking at workflow and media management. Just as we can't have too much storage, media cannot be too organized. From better ways to use the Finder to media asset management packages, tonight's show will help you work faster and better. We start with a news update from Drobo about new storage hardware. Rod Harrison, the VP of Engineering for StorCentric, tells us about the fastest Drobo system they've ever released. Next, Robert Krüger, the managing partner for Lesspain software, describes their new version 1.6 update to Kyno. This all-in-one asset management system has features that both Premiere and Final Cut users will like. Next, David Schleifer, COO of Primestream, showcases who Primestream is, their products, and how we should be preparing our media for the future. Next, Michael Kammes, Director of Technology for Keycode Media, is a big believer in the value of an efficient workflow. Tonight, he shares his tips on how to manage your media without spending a ton of money. In fact, many of his tips are free. All this plus James DeRuvo with our weekly Doddle News Update. The Buzz starts now.
Since the dawn of digital filmmaking,
authoritative.
One show serves a worldwide network of media professionals.
Current.
Uniting industry experts,
Production.
filmmakers,
Post-production.
and content creators around the planet.
Distribution.
From the media capital of the world in Los Angeles, California, the Digital Production Buzz goes live now.
Welcome to the Digital Production Buzz, the world's longest-running podcast for the creative content industry, covering media production, post-production, and marketing around the world. Hi, my name is Larry Jordan. Apple is making big news today. James DeRuvo will have more on this in just a minute, and I'll share my thoughts at the end of tonight's show. Tonight, we're looking at workflow and media management. I define workflow as an organized, generally written process for completing a task efficiently. And yes, that definition will be on the quiz. Recently, I asked the readers of my newsletter to share their ideas for subjects that I should cover in my weekly webinars. Virtually every comment that came back wanted tips to improve workflow, which surprised me. You see, I've learned that the fastest way to empty a room is to tell the assembled multitudes that you're going to talk about workflow. Gone. But when you're struggling to finish a project and can't find the shot you need, or can't figure out why your project isn't outputting, workflow becomes pretty darn important. So tonight, we look at workflow from a variety of perspectives, ranging from the operating system to standalone applications. I enjoyed putting this show together and hope you do as well. By the way, if you enjoy The Buzz, please give us a positive rating and review in the iTunes store. We appreciate your support to help us grow our audience. And now it's time for our weekly Doddle News Update with James DeRuvo. Hello, James.
Boy, you've been pretty busy this week.
I have had a heck of a week, that's for sure.
We're thankful that all is safe and sound where you are.
Indeed, yes. James, what's our news this week?
Big news today coming out of Apple as they have made a significant updates to Final Cut Pro, Apple Compressor, and Apple Motion. For Final Cut Pro, it's the 28th free update, which expands its support for third-party extensions, plus improved editing workflow tools and a host of other features. The updated extensions are coming from Frame.io, Shutterstock, and CatDV. Apple Compressor has a full 64-bit conversion, so it's a 64-bit app now, but it's maintaining support for all those 32-bit legacy codecs. And Apple Motion adds a comprehensive set of color grading tools, including color wheels, curves, hue saturation curves, and custom LUTM.
This is exciting news, James. What's your opinion?
The consistent concern for some editors is that Apple doesn't take Final Cut Pro 10 very seriously. But 28 updates since its release, that tells me that they do. Keep in mind that though Motion got the same color tools as Final Cut, though, Motion still doesn't have any video scopes, which means that those tools are going to bit harder to use. But, maybe they'll get it in the next update.
Okay, Apple is making news today. What's your second story?
A videographer is suing Adobe over deleting years of video files. This is all wrapped around a bug in Premiere Pro's Clean Cache folder. This is a folder that saves all your rendering videos into a separate folder so that when you're done with them, you can just delete them without deleting all your other videos. But the problem is that there was a bug in the Clean Cache, which when you deleted those temporary files, it deleted all this user's data, which included over 500 hours of video files, something like 11,000 video files in his master video storage folder. And the videographer made the mistake of putting the Clean Cache folder in the same master folder as all of his data. So that's where the bug was able to delete everything. And so he's suing. He wants over $250,000 plus lost revenue for the next several decades that he would be able to earn on those video files.
This seems to me that it's pretty obvious that Adobe is at fault, isn't it?
Well, I get it that Adobe is at fault here. They wrote the program. But there's who's at fault, and then there's who's responsible. Clearly, Adobe is to blame for the bug. They had a slightly similar bug that deleted Mac user files when they logged in to Creative Cloud a couple of years ago. And you may have heard that in a recent update in Windows, the update deleted user data as well. The thing is that these are all complicated applications, and there's going to be bugs every once in a while. This is why the user needs to take personal responsibility and have a backup strategy. This videographer opted not to have a backup, and he makes his living at this. Why you wouldn't back up years' worth of video data is beyond me. And while Adobe has fixed the problem, in my mind, this videographer has really nobody to blame but himself.
Okay, we've covered Apple and Adobe. What's third?
The Nikon Z series mirrorless camera is getting internal log support from a third party. Thanks to Nikon's open picture profile architecture, users can upload their own custom profiles into the camera. And so the filmmakers over at EOS HD created their own log profile that they're calling Z-Log, which provides cinematic flat log profiles to shoot on, as well as increased dynamic range. And the profile also turns off Nikon's sharpening algorithm, which can inject a little bit more noise into the image. And there's also a cinematic LUT package for post-production color grading on the fly.
What's the significance of this?
Well, Nikon currently supports log recording through an external video recorder, but this hack, which really isn't a hack at all, it's just a color profile, offers log internally. So if you're shooting out in the field or on the run, you won't have to be tethered to an external video recorder. And it's not just for the Z-Series mirrorless cameras either, as users can apply this profile to the most current D-Series cameras, including the D5 and D850.
Interesting. James, what other stories are you following this week?
Other stories we're following, there are a host of great new features coming to the Arri Alexa LF and Blackmagic Ursa Mini Pro with firmware updates. A filmmaker creates a rig that lets him mimic large format 65mm shooting on a Panasonic EVA-1, and it's pretty cool. And can you get 8K video with a Sony a7R III mirrorless camera? Well, sort of. What's going on tonight on The Buzz?
Sort of, all right.
Sort of.
Tonight we're looking at media management and workflow, which always sounds boring until you're trying to get your work done.
That videographer sure could use a couple of tips. Maybe he'll tune in tonight.
We can only hope. James, where can we go on the web to find these and all the other stories you're covering this week?
All these stories and more can be found at doddlenews.com.
And James DeRuvo is the editor-in-chief of Doddle News and joins us every week. We'll see you next Thursday.
All right. Have a good weekend.
Ron Harrison is the VP of Engineering for StorCentric, and StorCentric is the parent company for Drobo. And Drobo has just released a brand new product that I want to tell you about. Rod, what did Drobo announce?
Drobo has just announced the release of the 8D, which is our new 8-bay direct attach storage device. So it's 8 front bays, a little 2.5-inch standard SSD slot at the back for acceleration, and 2 Thunderbolt 3 interfaces.
What were your goals in creating this product?
So Drobo 8D is really targeted at creative professionals. So it's very high performance. It's the highest performance Drobo we've ever made. Even though it's not focused on performance, it's still the easiest storage in the world to use. But we think creative professionals, with a modern digital workflow, with huge raw files and 4K, 5K, 8K video, these guys need a certain minimum performance level these days. And Drobo 8D is very targeted at that kind of space.
Drobo makes a wide variety of storage products. Why did you decide you needed to create this one?
Specifically for the higher end workflows, the Drobo is, as you said, it does have a wide range and it fits in all sorts of segments in the prosumer and consumer storage space. But the Drobo 8D is very targeted at people that have higher demands, the more demanding workflows that the lower end Drobos perhaps would struggle to meet.
What were your specific objectives? What were you trying to accomplish?
As with all Drobos, we are trying to be the simplest storage possible out there. We want our storage to be simple to use as any other tool. You don't buy storage because you're excited about storage. You buy storage because you have a need. So we want it to be as easy to use as your vacuum cleaner. So we're still trying to focus on simplicity, but we're trying to address those high performance workflows and 4K, 8K video, content creator type workflows. So we brought a lot more performance here. It's the fastest Drobo we've ever built.
What kind of speeds are you seeing in your measurements?
Running averages over 1 hour, we see about 1,100 megabytes a second on the read side and a little bit lower, 400 megabytes a second on the write side.
What are you recommending for hard drives? Are you putting in Western Digital or Seagates or what? We
partner with Seagate and Western Digital. One thing actually we didn't mention, you will want to use good hard drives in here. And by that, I mean NAS hard drives will affect your performance. So you will want to use compute drives like Seagate Barracuda Pro or Western Digital Black. If you put in the equivalent NAS drive, like Iron Wolf Pro or WD Reds, you will see a little hit on the performance. It'll probably take it down to around 700-800. So to get which is perfectly fine. I mean, those are perfectly good drives, and that's still a really fast performance. But if you want to see those top line numbers, you will have to use compute drives.
And when does the product ship?
The product is available today.
And where can we go on the web to learn more?
www.drobo.com should have all the information you need.
That website is all one word, DROBO, drobo.com. And Rod Harrison is the VP of Engineering for StorCentric. And Rod, thanks for talking with us today.
Thanks very much for your time, Larry. It's been a pleasure.
Here's another website I want to introduce you to, dottlenews.com. Dottle News gives you a portal into the broadcast, video, and film industries. It's a leading online resource presenting news, reviews, and products for the film and video industry. Dottle News also offers a resource guide and crew management platform specifically designed for production. These digital call sheets, along with their app, directory, and premium listings, provide in-depth organizational tools for busy production professionals. Dottle News is a part of the Thalo Arts community, a worldwide community of artists, filmmakers, and storytellers. From photography to filmmaking, performing arts to fine arts, and everything in between, Thalo is filled with resources you need to succeed. Whether you want the latest industry news, need to network with other creative professionals, or require state-of-the-art online tools to manage your next project, there's only one place to go, dottlenews.com. Robert Krüger has worked in the media industry as a software professional for 20 years. Currently, he's the managing director for Lesspain Software, which developed Kyno, a brand new media management tool for Final Cut and Premiere. Hello, Robert. Welcome back.
Hi, Larry. Great to be here again.
Robert, how would you describe Kyno?
Kyno is essentially the combination of all the tools that people used to use in their workflow between camera and edit before Kyno existed. So it combines a professional media player, a media file browser, logging tools, transcoder, and numerous other utilities in one very easy to use user interface.
We've talked about this before, but I find the story interesting. Why did you decide to develop it?
It was essentially just the experience as a filmmaker in the beginning, really small scale independent projects where we as software developers with a long history of having built larger systems were simply shocked about the inefficiency in the entire process, having to switch between several programs, lots of compatibility issues, losing information when switching between programs, and simple things like just isolating, say, 3-4 seconds in a shot. Simple things just weren't simple, or just extracting an audio track from a video clip. All these things required crazy workarounds, and that's why we decided to build one simple application that does all that and does it much faster and much more conveniently.
Robert, one of the things that's impressed me about Kyno is that you've regularly added new features. What are your plans for the future? What's coming up?
Oh, we're just about to launch version 1.6, and the biggest new thing, apart from a lot of minor improvements all across the board, is that we will add what is usually called offloading, that is checksum verified backup functionality to Kyno, which has been requested by a lot of users for a long time, and we've been wanting to implement it for a long time. But now with this addition, we have the full workflow covered from SD card or whatever camera media you have, through to the edit. And there are a lot of people who have to rely on checksum verified backup, for example, for insurance and more expensive projects. This is just a security measure that everyone needs to take. And before this addition to Kyno, people had to buy separate applications to get this backup functionality with the checksum verification into their workflow. And now they don't have to leave Kyno. They have all the convenience of Kyno and the quick and industry standard checksum verified copy in one application. And that's a big step.
Now, what does the words checksum verification mean? What does it do?
It means that it compares, after having copied your file, it compares if the source file and the file that you copy to the backup location are exactly identical, and the mathematical method of doing that to compare each byte of the file. And that is rock solid and is something that you can even repeat if you have a backup that you made a year ago and you use an industry standard for storing a file that contains all those checksums. You can always verify if your archive is still correct.
All right, that's checksum verification. What other new stuff do you have for 1.6?
Limited in this case to the premium edition is red raw, that is R3D support, which is something that has been requested by quite a few users as well. That will be a great addition for people using red cameras, obviously working in more expensive productions in cinema productions. So that was quite a big step for us as well.
Is there going to be an upgrade cost for 1.6?
It's a one-time license fee, and if you want updates after 1 year after you bought the license, then you have to renew the license, and there's an update fee for that, but it's not tied to the version. So if you bought a Kyno license half a year ago, then 1.6 will be free of charge. If you bought one more than a year ago, then you will have to pay the respective update fee.
Well, you've mentioned Kyno Premium. What's that?
Kyno Premium is an edition that is targeted at people working in mostly larger organizations or larger productions requiring different codecs, like in this case, or like the just mentioned R3D codec for a very, very expensive camera. And for example, people working in environments where Avid is the lead NLE. They need DNX HD and DNX HR codec support, export support. That is added in the premium version. And we have a number of more advanced workflow options. One of those is delivery workflow that integrates file transfer, FTP file transfer, has options for Aspera file acceleration and things like that that are usually just relevant in larger organizations. And there are some more productivity features like metadata templates or being able to pre-tag SD cards with metadata, things that are usually just applicable in larger organizations. That's why we call it Kyno Premium.
Well, if Kyno Premium is designed for the larger production agency, who's Kyno designed for? Who's your target customer?
Our target customer, as we thought when we brought it out, was essentially everyone making films or videos ranging from the ambitious college kid working on their first submission to a film festival to TV professionals. But as it turns out, the range we cover now, judging by the users that get in touch with us, is really, really broad. We have, even for the standard version, we have the full range from the college kid to big broadcasters, but also people from non-media industries. For example, industrial video use, like in real estate, they all have similar problems being able to browse video efficiently and log it. So it's a really, really broad target audience.
I got a question from a listener earlier this week who was curious about how much automation Kyno supports. Can you create scripts to automate, say, media processing or moving files from one location to another?
At the moment, you cannot, but that is definitely something that we're looking at for Kyno Premium, because it's definitely one of those features that are typically used in larger productions or in larger organizations. And we are thinking about integrating scripting support in the delivery workflow. But apart from that, there are no concrete plans. But I mean, if this user wants to get in touch with us and tell us what his idea is for the feature, then we're definitely willing to listen, because I think at the moment, I would say about 50% of the new features that we launch in updates are driven by user feedback, if not more.
I'll reach back to him and let him know. How well does Kyno support media on shared storage like servers?
It supports it very well. And for some of our users, this is the primary area of application. For example, we have a number of production companies and even TV networks who use Kyno as a MAM replacement for their production drives. Because the nice thing about Kyno is that you don't have to create a catalog through a lengthy process before you are able to browse and filter your media based on metadata. And with a function that we call drill down, you can really quickly and efficiently browse thousands and tens of thousands of media files hidden in really, really nasty nested folder structures that every one of us working in the post-production industry knows. So yes, that's definitely one of the sweet spots of Kyno.
Media is exploding. Every time we go on a shoot, it seems like we develop and shoot and create more media. What best practices do you advise so that media creators can easily find and access the clips that they need? What works best when you're using Kyno?
Apart from using Kyno, definitely all the old best practices really haven't changed. If you shoot much more than you need, then you will have to organize more. So a more experienced camera person will shoot less garbage, to be frank. Within Kyno, it really depends. It really depends on your workflow and in your process. We don't really prescribe a workflow way to organize yourself. Some people love organizing themselves or organizing their footage in markers and tags. Others use naming conventions. I personally use a lot of markers and tags to organize my footage, but I would not tell everyone that this is the only way to do it. So there's not one answer to this question.
For people that are interested in purchasing Kyno, what does it cost, and what's the cost of Kyno Premium?
The Kyno Standard Edition, the edition costs $159. Kyno Premium Edition costs $349 per seat.
$349 per seat.
Yes, that's correct.
And for people that want more information, where can they go on the web to learn about Kyno?
The address is kyno.software.
That's KYNO.software, not .com, kynosoftware.com. And Robert Krüger is the founder and managing director for Lesspain Software, which developed Kyno. And Robert, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks very much, Larry, for having me again.
As a 25-year veteran of the technology industry, David Schleifer previously held key executive positions at Avid Technology. Now, he's the Chief Operating Officer for Primestream. That's Primestream, a company specializing in media management. Hello, David. Welcome back.
Hello, Larry. Good to be here again.
I got to keep practicing pronouncing the name of your company. You wouldn't think Primestream would be that difficult. How would you
usually my name.
I got that one right. How would you describe Primestream? What do you guys do?
We do a lot, and that in itself can be a challenge for some people, but basically we try and manage the entire process or any part of it that you need, whether that's capture, production, management, or distribution of your assets.
Well, why focus on the entire process? Many companies specialize on just a piece of it. You're biting off a pretty large chunk of territory.
That we are. Part of its history and legacy and the fact that we have products that we've built, products that we've acquired, and we have customers who've demanded from us the ability to have one vendor that they can go to that can guarantee the kind of end-to-end workflow that they want. Now, there are also other customers who are only looking for a best-in-class tool or a specific piece of our functionality, of our suite of products, if you will. And we're quite happy to work with them and provide to them exactly what they need. So for us, it really gives us the best of both worlds. We can walk into a facility, we can ask them what they need, we can try and deliver as much of it as possible, but when they have existing functionality, we can work with that. We can integrate with it. We've got over several hundred third-party partners that we work with, and we're happy to continue adding to that.
Well, clearly you have a wide range of products, but what would you describe as your key product offerings?
We refer to kind of the core of everything as dynamic media management. The reason we use that term is that media asset management is part of it, but it doesn't really tell the whole story. Media asset management is critically important to any workflow that you're trying to build. But what we can also bring to the table is the ability to automate that, to set trigger based on metadata that will take you to the next step in an approval process, or trigger a transcode. So that is the dynamic part of it. It really lets you not only get the value of managing your assets, but also get the value of being able to do more with it without people needing to have their hands in every step of the workflow. And the other benefit that delivers to you is it delivers consistency. If you want every asset that gets to a certain stage in your workflow to suddenly be available to a different group of people or in a different resolution, proxies, for example, because the next step might be to archive it. We can do all of that consistently, day in, day out, without getting bored because it's automation.
You target products at a variety of different markets. Clearly, your top line is enterprise and broadcast focused, but for smaller work groups, what products should we look at?
It's interesting because all of the markets, sports, enterprise, broadcast that we touch on, all have large, medium, and small. And we're seeing more and more functionality pushing down market because more and more production is being done at that level. So what we have are lower cost bundles that we're starting to roll out. We also have some standalone products that are being launched. And here's an example where we took our technology around IP ingest and capturing, and we've made it into a standalone product that can be pushed down or just used on its own. So for us, we look at that part of the market not only from a price point of view, but what we're trying to do is to deliver value and functionality to make that price point more valuable to the customer. Now, for us, by focusing on value and functionality, we get benefits all up and down, no matter what size you are. But specifically at the lower end of the market, it is critical that the tool you get do much more than you might need today, because you're going to grow if it's successful and if you're successful. So for us to be able to roll in the ability to do some of that automation, to do IP ingest, to basically have support for non-video assets in the system and so forth, all of that really makes it much more viable of a product at the low end.
One of the things that happened after we made the transition from recording on film or recording on tape and starting to record digitally is that we're now generating massive amounts of data, media to manage these days. How is this changing how you are designing your media management tools?
This is, you put your thumb right on something that is critically important to the industry at large, and especially smaller locations where they deal with projects and they used to just take a box of tapes and put them someplace. So we're dealing with a lot of digital data, with a lot of files, and to date, a lot of that has been put onto data tape. And as those data tapes get replaced with new formats or higher density tapes, facilities or people face the task of moving that forward onto new tapes or onto new drives. Now we're seeing a lot of people leveraging the cloud. So basically with object storage in the cloud, it's very easy to move the files up there. And then the only concern you have moving forward is really preserving your ability to leverage those files, the MPEG formats, whatever it is that you're using as your archive format. So you no longer have to worry about the underlying layer of what kind of tape or transport or robot you're using there. You focus on being able to use the media. For us, on the asset management side, it is critically important that we allow people to create the workflows they need with the stuff that is in the cloud. For example, somebody might need to be able to preview it on their system with a proxy resolution that they can store locally while they're waiting for a 4K version to come back for the actual produced piece. The other thing that can also help them with is by allowing them to sub-clip the proxy resolution, they don't have to pay the egress charges in the cloud to pull down gigabytes or terabytes of data. They can just pull down the pieces they need to reuse or to remonetize that asset. So there's a lot of thought that goes into how asset management can save you money, build workflows that allow you to be more competitive and creative. For us, we want to make creativity something that is really your focus. We want to be as easy to use as possible in a facility. And those goals push us to design our systems in certain ways.
Well, that gets me to, I think, a core question. What are customers demanding from you now that they weren't, say, 2 or 3 years ago? Where are the customers taking you?
Everywhere, all at once. You've met some of those customers. They are demanding, but it's great. It pushes us. It pushes the envelope. We're seeing a lot of interest in IP, which I mentioned earlier, because the idea of being able to sit in the middle of a network infrastructure and be able to grab, live streams coming in or streams that are coming in from phones or Facebook or whatever is critically important to current workload. But we're also seeing a lot of interest in artificial intelligence and AI. And the reason for that is, there's not only the science fiction part of it, which everyone loves. Gee, a computer is helping me. But the real promise of it will be when you can rely on it to do things for you that allow you to get more out of your media. Now, it's very important that we understand what we're actually doing. I always use this one example, which is, would you hand off your media to an AI engine to populate the metadata when you're not going to find out till 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road whether or not it was right? So we have to make sure that those systems are accurate. And right now we can get facial recognition, we can get speech to text, we can get sentiment, we can get all kinds of new types of data, and we have to figure out how to use them, how efficient they are, how accurate they are. And by doing that, we'll be able to deliver a lot of benefits. All of those are kind of directions that people are pushing us in right now, in addition to other things like managing projects instead of just assets, managing versions within projects instead of just the piece that I'm editing, because the demands on the users are getting more complex. The demands on us, therefore, become more complex.
David, for people that want more information about the products that Primestream makes, where can they go on the web?
You can find us at primestream.com, and we'd be happy to answer all of your questions. And if you don't find the answers on the website, reach out. The website will tell you how.
That web address is Primestream, Primestream, Primestream.com, and David Schleifer is the Chief Operations Officer of Primestream. And David, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Larry.
Take care. Bye-bye. I want to introduce you to a new website, Thalo.com. Thalo is an artist community and networking site for creative people to connect, be inspired, and showcase their creativity. Thalo.com features content from around the world with a global perspective on all things creative. Thalo is the place for creative folks to learn, collaborate, market, and sell their works. Thalo is a part of Thalo Arts, a worldwide community of artists, filmmakers, and storytellers. From photography to filmmaking, performing arts to fine arts, and everything in between, Thalo is filled with the resources you need to succeed. Visit Thalo.com and discover how their community can help you connect, learn, and succeed. That's Thalo.com. In his current role as Director of Technology at Keycode Media, Michael Kammes consults on the latest in technology and best practices into digital media and communications. And he has a strange love of workflow and codecs and process, which is perfect for what we want to talk about today. Hello, Michael. Welcome.
Hello, Larry. Good to hear your voice again.
It's always fun talking to you because every time you and I chat, I learn something, which I always find exciting. Michael, a popular saying is that you can't be too rich or too thin. In that vein, is it possible for our media to be too organized?
Well, I got to think about that because I'm still dwelling on the too rich or too thin. I mean, I'd like to borrow from both of those. No, I don't think we can be too organized. I think that now that we're trying to adopt machine learning or artificial intelligence, there's a lot of ways to get a ton of metadata about your files. And I think we can drown in that metadata. And I think that's when organization can be too much because you have so much information to make decisions with, it becomes overwhelming. But I think when it comes to organizing your files on a folder hierarchy with naming, that kind of thing, I don't think we can be too organized.
2 weeks ago, we devoted the entire show to talking about machine learning and artificial intelligence, and people kept stressing that this metadata is really important. What makes metadata so important?
With media, there is inherent metadata, right? What shutter speed it was shot at, what codec it was shot at, what day it was recorded. But a lot of that isn't material that we need when we're in the creative process. When we're in the creative process, we want to find things like a reaction shot or someone in particular saying something. And those are the things we need for creative decisions as opposed to what the codec is. So I think when we start utilizing machine learning and artificial intelligence to give us that kind of creative metadata, I think that's when we're going to see it really, really come to fruition for us as creatives.
Tonight, we're focusing on workflow ideas and processes and low-cost tools. Before we start spending money, what can we do to organize our media without spending money?
Well, the easiest thing to do is do what I call asset management by OS, which is instead of just dumping your files in one big folder and hoping that you'll remember in 6 months how you laid it out, it's putting things in a particular folder hierarchy, in a particular way of organizing within folders. So no matter who looks at it, whether it's you or somebody else, when you refer to that, you instantly know why something is in that folder and what purpose that media serves. So having a stable folder structure, I think, is the first step.
Okay, what would be another step?
Another step is your naming convention. And there's a great application out there that does a lot of this for you. It's called Post Haste by Digital Rebellion. And it's an app that at the beginning of a project, you can create a template of folders. Also a naming convention for your project file. So it can interject your name, being the creator, the creative that's working on it, the date, the name of the client. If you have a billing system, you can put in the billing number that you have for that client. So Post Haste will create a series of folders and recursive folders inside of there. So you're always starting out with a good organizational foundation for your project and media files.
That application is Post Haste, all one word, Post Haste, and the company that developed it is Digital Rebellion. Okay, what other ideas before we start spending money?
The other thing is that if you're looking into a asset management system, and I know that's a bad phrase, you want to look for an asset management system that understands your file hierarchy. And this is why it becomes really important, is that it's always daunting to add media to an asset management system because all of that people perceive as being done manually. But good asset management systems can look at your existing file hierarchy and assign metadata based on where those files lie in that folder structure. So you always want to look for something that is going to understand that folder structure, so it can start assigning that metadata and it gives you a good base to start from.
When we're shooting file formats like AVC HD or H.264, which is most DSLR cameras and many, many low-end cameras, when we're copying media from the camera card to the computer, we can't copy specific files or specific shots. We need to copy the entire contents of the card into its own folder, which means we could have a mix of shots in that folder. Does a folder naming system still work in that case?
You bring up a good point. Yes, there's nothing wrong with nesting folders within folders. So there's nothing wrong with putting day one and the date, or day two and where you actually shot. There's nothing wrong with putting those descriptors in a parent folder name. So that's very important. One of the things you also mentioned was copying folders. And I think a lot of rookie mistakes are, I'm just going to drag and drop from the card the file that I want to my portable drive or my network storage. And that's, as you know, the worst thing you can do. First thing is to always copy the entire card hierarchy, because a lot of NLEs and a lot of encoders need to see those ancillary files. But not only copy it, but use a copy application that does checksumming, meaning it verifies every bit and byte that's copied, so you don't erroneously copy something that ends up being corrupted and then you have no way of getting it.
You know, you're the second person that mentioned this. Robert Krüger mentioned it in his interview earlier today, and it surprises me that the Finder doesn't do checksumming automatically.
Well, I think there's a way to do it via command line, but I think if people were to see a drag and drop that did a checksum, your copy times would be slower because it is verifying every bit and byte. And I think if you're trying to show off how fast your new machine is and how much people are paying for it, you want that kind of speed. So I think not doing a checksum automatically shows faster speeds, and of course, it's great for marketing.
Let's shift gears and get out our credit cards and start to buy software. What software do you recommend that doesn't cost a king's ransom that can help us get a handle on our media?
I think one of the tools that you talk about in this episode is Kyno, which is a really good, my first starter asset management solution. I think when you start getting to what I would consider facility grade or work group grade, meaning multiple people are accessing it and multiple people need to access that media and then utilize it, I think Axle is a great place to start. Axle comes in, I think, around $1,000, give or take, depending on what you go with. And that runs on a Mac server. And everyone can access it via a web page, and you can search and you can annotate. If you are so inclined, you can start using cognitive services in the cloud. So Microsoft, facial recognition, speech to text, facial recognition. So I think Axle is a really good starting point for multiple creatives who need to access and search their assets.
I'm a fan of Kyno. I'm also a fan of Axle and the web. Kyno is Kyno software. We heard that from Robert earlier in the show. Axle software is axle.ai. And a third package that I like is Keyflow Pro, keyflowpro.com, which is also a media asset management system that can help you keep track of your media. As people are trying to get their arms around wrestling media, what tips do you have for them aside from good file naming and good copying procedures?
This may sound kind of sales oriented, but one of the things I like to do is look at where you anticipate your business to be in 1 year, 5 years, et cetera. If you're planning on growing, then it makes sense to, invest in an asset management system and an organizational system which is going to support you 1 year, 5 years down the road. I think too often folks will look into something simple as a Band-Aid without looking towards the future. I think another thing to look into is asset management systems that may serve multiple purposes. And what I mean by that is we look at companies like SNS, Studio Network Solutions. They're a storage company. They're an inexpensive storage company. But what comes with SNS is Share Browser, which is a light asset management system. And I found that a lot of folks say, you know what, we don't need the functionality that these tens of thousands of dollars systems cost. We don't need that functionality, but we need storage. So what if we get SNS storage and use the built-in asset management called Share Browser, and we find that that is a common bridge and it serves multiple masters. Not only are you getting the fast storage you need, but you're also getting the asset management with it. And I find that to be very appealing for a lot of users.
One of the things I've learned over the years is I have yet to meet an editor who enjoys doing media management. They would love to do anything, including watch fungus grow, than try to get their media organized. What advice do you have for them to try to make this whole process seem less daunting?
It's the old pay now or pay later philosophy. If you are that eager to edit, where you dump everything on a drive and just start editing, great. So what happens in a month, in a year, when you have to archive that, or you need to go back and search for things? It's going to become a nightmare because no matter how good your memory is, you're not going to remember every nuance of that project and where the media is stored. So that causes more stress at the back end. I'm a big fan of any media that you get, you organize from minute one, you add the data, the metadata from minute one, and that makes the rest of the process easier. In fact, a lot of houses, a lot of facilities that I work with that deal with large amounts of footage mandate that any logger, any assistant editor, any editor that brings media into their system must go through a mandatory web page where they can add metadata to the asset management system. Because remember, the person who's creating isn't the only person touching this media. It's usually other people as well.
Michael, for people who want the latest on your thinking and your perspective on the industry, where can they go on the web?
A few places. You can go to my namesake, michaelkammes.com, and you can also go to 5thingsseries.com.
That's MichaelKammes, all one word, michaelkammes.com. And the Michael Kammes himself is who you've been listening to. Michael, thanks for joining us today.
Always a pleasure, Larry. Thank you.
You know, I was just thinking, Apple released significant updates to Final Cut Pro 10, Motion 5, and Compressor this morning. While I need to work with the software a bit to create a more informed opinion about the specifics of the update, several bigger trends occur to me. The headline featured deservedly as workflow extensions. Like Premiere, Final Cut now supports third-party workflow extensions that extend the capabilities of the application in an integrated fashion to include functions that Apple does not support natively. I think these workflow extensions are both welcome and necessary. In spite of its vast resources, Apple can't do everything. It's wise to allow other developers to piggyback on the Final Cut engine to create tools that appeal to specific segments of the Final Cut user base. New extensions that were released alongside Final Cut this morning include collaboration software from Frame.io, stock footage access from Shutterstock, and enterprise-grade media asset management software from CatDV. Other extensions are in process, but not highlighted in today's announcements. What makes these extensions significant is that they don't appear as separate apps, but as floating windows inside Final Cut. You can drag and drop across the extension as easily as you drag and drop from the browser to the timeline. Extensions become transparent power boosters for the application. I'm also intrigued that, unlike Premiere, Final Cut has implemented real-time collaboration using a third-party extension rather than natively, as Adobe did with Team projects. This tells me that Apple is not feeling a lot of pressure to support collaboration more directly. Now, this takes nothing away from Frame.io. Emery Wells and his team have created a powerful and flexible collaboration tool that connects all the team involved in creating a video. I look forward to playing with it in this new implementation. I'm still looking at the other new features as well. Batch export will save me time every week. The comparison viewer acts like a frame store for multiple still images, and the floating timecode window makes me smile. The addition of color correction tools in Motion makes me wish Motion also had video scopes, while the 64-bit upgrade to Compressor will boost both speed and compatibility with the operating system. All in all, there's a lot to see here, and I'm looking forward to sharing more of my thoughts with you in Monday's Edit Smarter newsletter. Just something I'm thinking about. I want to thank our guests this week: Rod Harrison with Drobo, Robert Krüger with Lesspain Software, David Schleifer with Primestream, Michael Kammes with Keycode Media, and James DeRuvo with DoddleNews.com. There's a lot of history in our industry, and it's all posted to our website at digitalproductionbuzz.com. Here you'll find thousands of interviews, all online and all available to you today. And remember to sign up for our free weekly show newsletter that comes out every Saturday morning. Talk with us on Twitter at DPBuzz and Facebook at digitalproductionbuzz.com. Our theme music is composed by Nathan Doogie Turner, with additional music provided by smartsound.com. Our producer is Debbie Price. My name is Larry Jordan, and thanks for listening to the Digital Production Buzz. The Digital Production Buzz is copyright 2018 by Thalo LLC.